swing it. It's a ball, fly ball. Home run!
3, 2, 1. All right, better late than never, I guess. That's what they like to say.
Who says that? Who likes to say it?
Me, I like to say it.
You like to say it?
Yeah. So we're here the day after the big kaboom, and Brian Burke is done as the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
GM and president. He's now a special advisor, which is stupid as hell.
Well, it's bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't...
That doesn't even exist, I don't think.
No, and I heard it referenced, too, that it's similar to is Alan Embry on the Raptors side?
Yep.
Which...
It's not Alan Embry, but it's fine.
What's his name?
It's Wayne Embry.
Wayne Embry. Right. Wayne Embry. It's all right.
Hey, let's keep going.
Well, I don't quite get why, if a guy is, okay, all the talk that's come out, right, is that he rubbed people the wrong way. He didn't get along with people. So if he's an advisor, what good is he then? Because if he's really that valuable still, he'd still be in a more influential position.
Sorry for interrupting. He's an advisor in name only. He will be out of the Maple Leafs organization within the month, I think. He'll be moving on somewhere else. And I think really what they've done is they've shut his trap, in a sense, because he likes to talk. And I think he would sort of be very blunt and very brutal about what he would think.
So the fact that he's still under the MLS&E umbrella means he can't say anything. Right. Now, what I question is, I guess that I would say with Burke, he seems professional enough that he wouldn't, but he also seems like to me that if he was pissed off enough and thought he was done wrong, that he would come out and say something. So I guess I'm sort of saying both sides of the coin, I see anyway, but it's an interesting move to me. I can't say I'm not upset by it, being Leafs fan and everything. I've kind of come to the end of my Burke fandom last year. I thought he was good for the team. I thought he was good when he first got hired. I thought he was a great hire. I thought finally we got a substantial guy in that position that isn't going to be pushed around and be a yes man to the board. But I think his tenure has just been horribly negative overall.
Well, I mean, looking at his record, his overall record as GM was 128, 135, and 42. So almost 500. But not really when you consider that those 42 are not necessarily ties because there's a shootout, and those are overtime losses. So really, that's 128 and 177. Yeah.
So it's a ways under 500 in that when you look at it that way. Yeah. So and there's so many different things. I mean, the whole you and me are sports junkies, so I go into work, I listen to the sports talk radio, I sit at work all day and look at sports, and then I drive home and listen to sports radio. I get up before I come into work, the hours I'm not at work, I'm looking at sports stuff. This has been the #1 story in this market, and we live in Toronto since it happened, obviously, and there's been so many reasons given as to why, and thoughts and philosophies on why he's gone, that he rubbed people the wrong way, that the main reason was his record, as we've just stated. The main reason was that he kept Ron Wilson on too long, which led to the bad record. There's other things, there's other people saying there's still stuff to come out that we don't know about that will be a reason as to why he's fired. I don't know what to believe myself. I'm kind of tired of already, and it's been just over 24 hours, kind of tired of hearing as to people's thoughts as to why he was let go. The deal is it's time to move on. He's gone. He's gone, and he's not there. So badmouth his moves, badmouth the Kessel trade, badmouth bringing in Komisarek and Boschman, all you want. But the fact is, he's gone. Those are in the past now. Now I got to deal with Dave Nonis and how to move forward. And what does this team do to move forward positively?
See, for me as a non-Leaf fan, I'm just going to say a couple things. Burke did say when he came in here, he had a 5-year plan, and within that 5 years, that the Leafs would be a contender. Well, we're 5 years into it, and Burke's now gone, going into his 6th year if he was going to stay here. And, needless to say, I'm not sure the Leafs are a Stanley Cup contender.
The crazy thing is, I've heard a couple of guys on the radio, a couple of the reporters, and I completely agree with them, who have said that they are of the mind that the Leafs are in worse shape now than they were when he came. And I do agree with that. I think the Pro Club is in worse shape now. The Marlies are a better team. John Ferguson Jr. decimated
if you're into the American Hockey League, you are loving what Brian Burke did.
Absolutely. If you're a Marlies fan, you love it because the team is great. I went to the Calder Cup Finals last year, and they ran into a team for the ages and lost. But having said that, that team is stacked. They got some really good players there right now. The problem is,
I really like the
players,
East Coast Hockey League as well.
ECHL. I don't know who plays there, to be honest with you.
But that's pretty much exactly what you're saying
in a way,
with the American Hockey League. Because
in a way, I mean, and part of it, and this is a whole other ball of wax. In this city, when the Leaf tickets are so high priced and overpriced, and the venue is expensive to park, expensive to drink, expensive to eat, the Marlies are your next best option, because you're seeing some guys who may go to the Pro League one day or the big league one day
and be a good third or fourth line player.
Absolutely, and you can see them for dirt cheap, absolutely dirt cheap, and you can see the stars of tomorrow on the other teams coming in, kind of like going to watch the Oshawa Generals play, except they just haven't, by the time they're in the AHL, you know who they're playing for, or going to be playing for. So, to me,
I'm not belittling the American Hockey League, but a team that can win the American Hockey League doesn't always win. Like Rochester always seemed to win,
well, absolutely,
and they didn't necessarily make the New York Rangers the best team in the league.
Absolutely, and that's where we're at with the Marlies. Is Marlies are a top team in the AHL because of Burke. Like he's restacked the shelf. Problem is, I really don't see anybody on that team translating into
on that top shelf who's saying like, oh, this is my Stamkos, this is my Tyler Seguin.
Well, exactly.
I'm putting quotations there because
he should be there. But and if you read the little blog I wrote there, posted early this morning, late last night, was that Stamkos never played in the AHL. Not to my knowledge, anyway. If he did, it was a very short period of time. And that's
Dick
the thing.
Crosby?
No. Malkin.
Oh, Malkin, no.
Taylor Hall, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. No, he did this year. But this is the thing: is the Leafs have all their draft picks, playing in the A,
and none of them are standing out there.
And none of them are standing out.
They're playing good as a team.
They're playing good against AHL caliber players as a team.
But they're not. Nobody's there tearing it up.
Not a single one. Nazem Kadri is a bust. He is a brutal pick.
Because when you look at the Oklahoma City Bearings, where they had Nugent Hopkins, Hall, Justin Schultz, and Eberle, they were leading the league in points.
Yeah, absolutely.
So not only were they a good team, but those guys were standing out and dominating the point totals.
Absolutely. And had they gotten used, because anyone who pays attention to the NHL and the AHL knows that the style of play is a different style. It is because one's a pro game and one's not a pro game. So there's difference in the style of play. And for those of you who played hockey will understand that. Those of you who listened for years to hockey commentators talk about the difference in the NHL and the AHL will know it's not the same game. So it's different to be good in the AHL and good in the NHL. And the problem with the Leafs, they got some good young players, Jake Gardiner, Matt Fratton, Morgan Riley coming up, Tyler Biggs, all these guys, but none of them can crack the big team right now. Gardiner probably will play this year. But
if he's back from concussion.
But he's not going to be the star player. He's not going to be the star player on the Leafs defensive core. Granted, the Leafs defensive core is shitty, so he may very well be, but the problem is, much like Luke Schenn, and we've talked about this, they pushed Schenn into the big role well before he was ready. He should have been schooled more and trained more, and he might have matured differently. He may still be a really solid defenseman in the league, but it won't be with Toronto.
It'll be with the Flyers.
Yeah, and this is where the Leafs are at now, and it's all because of Burke. Burke's tenure is going to be remembered as a very negative tenure, on and off the ice. I mean, the product that he put on the ice is not a good product, and his media off the ice is also not good. It's sound bites, because negative sound bites.
And the way I kind of want to go about this is that, for instance, like if you look at the players that the Leafs have, and let's say they just had the guys that, like you suggested, in the AHL and the guys that they have playing with the team right now, and compare them necessarily to the Ottawa Senators last year, who are a young team, had all these prospects, similar to the Leafs. Well, the difference is they had a guy at the back end, and Erik Karlsson, who's a dominant offensive player, and then you have a Jason Spezza up front, who's a magician with the puck up front, who complement all these other young pieces and the growing pieces. I'm not quite sure they have a Jason Spezza up front in the Leafs, and I'm positive they don't have an Erik Karlsson on the back end.
No, and their best player point-wise is Phil Kessel. The guy is a mouse. The guy says nothing. I mean, I don't know what he's like in the change room, but he is meek in the media. He hides from the media. His sound bites are monosyllabic, monotonous, boring. I can't imagine he's that much different in the change room. So as your best player, he doesn't do anything. Where's the raw guy? As far as we know, it might have been Colby Armstrong, who's gone. It might have been Cole Knorr, gone. In days past, you had Darcy Tuckers, you had Ty Dolmes, who were not the best players, but they were the role players who were leaders. You had the Matt Sundin, who
but saying this, but even in those times, the Leafs weren't necessarily a contender.
No.
So that's where I'm saying they are missing that top end talent. Even with Sundin was obviously a top end talent, but there was no one else with him.
Exactly. I mean, for years. I mean, he had McGillney at the end of his career, but that was the big thing with Sundin. The big knock on Sundin was that he didn't have anyone to play with for 10 years that he was here. But he was a marquee player. He was probably a top 10 centerman in the league.
Absolutely,
if not top 10, top 15.
But even on this team, there's no one like that. You can't consider Phaneuf that. You can't consider Kessel that. Lupul's a great player, but he's a winger.
He's got to repeat that performance. He had a really good year with the Leafs.
But even that, he's not your Malkin, Crosby, Ovechkin.
No,
he's not in that tier, anyways.
No,
Stamkos.
And you look at Kessel. I mean, anytime you put a body on Kessel, he disappears. Kessel only plays. Kessel gets sneaky goals to me. Like, he gets some pretty ones, but they're sneaky. He does not blow down the wing and muscle his way in or wire a shot. That sort of thing that Wendell Clark used to do, or even I'll go back to I was thinking about Shane Corson the other day and Darcy Tucker. That yes, there was a lot of shit going on in the locker room those days. Those guys played. If they weren't scoring, they were hitting bodies, they were agitating, they were doing something. And they just don't have anybody do that right now. They don't have any of the guys playing roles except for that third and fourth line checking role who's trying to be more offensive than he's gifted to be.
But I know if you're a Leaf fan, but this has been the team's overview or their outlook for years.
Yeah,
I don't remember when this team was competitive. 92?
No, it was well, no, I mean it was later than that, when during Pat Quinn's era with Sundin and Roberts and Noondike, when they're knocking at the Senators year after year after year in the first round, but they would get then beat by Jersey or
that's what I mean. That's
Flyers.
The first or second round. That's not. You're not getting to the conference finals. You're not getting to the
conference final. Last conference final was the 93-94.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So I mean, this has been the mantra of this team for years.
Absolutely, and before that, I mean, you go back to it was only as far as '85 where they were dead last in the league, and they drafted, or '84, the end of the '84 season there, where they ended up drafting Wendell Clark first overall in '85. I mean, this is going on decades here where they've been horrible. The last team that was a contender, probably consistently, you have to throw out names like Sittler, Salming, McDonald, Turnbull, names like that, and you don't get that now. That Leaf team that Cliff Fletcher built, Alan Beho, that was later than that, but that was back. Palantir would have been back in those days.
I know. I'm just throwing out a name. That
93-94 run with Cliff Fletcher, that team basically got dismantled within a couple of years. Gilmore and Clark and all those guys left. They brought in Sundin, which was a building block for the future, but they didn't get a team competitive with Sundin until the early 2000s. So almost 10 years after the 93-94 era, the Pat Quinn era starts to look good. And they, like you said, first round always. They didn't get to a conference final at all.
And so then, just moving forward, not changing topics necessarily, but your thoughts on Dave Nonis being named the GM, and does he stay there, or is he this is his year, and then they do a more extensive search in the offseason?
I think this is a trial run for him. I don't see how he keeps his job past this year. I really don't. Even if the Leafs, I guess if the Leafs were to go far in the playoffs, they might buy themselves more time to find the guy they want. But this is a Burke guy. Now he has stated himself, and most of us know, because in this media, the trainers get attention in this market. The trainers get media attention. So Nonis has had media attention. He shies away from it. He's a quiet guy as far as the media goes. Now he's going to have that thrust in the spotlight a little bit more, but he's not like Burke. Burke craved the spotlight. So I mean, we're not going to see a lot from Nonis. He's probably very opposite of what Burke is. Without knowing him personally, I can't say for sure, but I'm guessing he is a much quieter individual.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, you can't go from a president GM like Brian Burke to a guy like Dave Nonis and then be like, that's the equivalent. We're good with that. We're going to stick with that.
Absolutely.
And then I've read your article, and you don't want Luongo, and I understand that. So if you were to make some deals, I'm assuming you're not looking necessarily this year, because if you were making a deal for this year, you're trading for the long goal and hoping for the best. So if you're looking as a long-term thing, what are you looking for Dave Nonis to do this year to make you as a fan happy with the future of this team?
Well, for me personally, Nonis has come out and said he's not going to do what I want to do. Burke said he's not going to do the 5-year bottom-out rebuild. He thought he could rebuild on the fly. Didn't work. Nonis is now coming in saying we're far enough along in that plan, we can't afford to rebuild again. But if you believe the idea that this team is worse off than they were when Burke started, then they might as well, because they're much further to the bottom, so they might as well start over. I'm thinking the same thing. I mean, we're not that far from the bottom now. Dump everything. Trade it all now, and make sure in this next upcoming draft there is some players like a Seth Jones that you are in line to get. This is supposed to be a fairly deep draft from 1 through 10. Maybe not, superstars. They're obviously not like a Crosby, Malkin kind of player. But you're apparently getting some really good depth
McKinnon,
players.
Duran, Seth Jones, right there.
They could very well be some franchise players.
Yeah, they absolutely could be.
Now, whether they're superstar franchise players or just franchise players.
We'll see.
We don't have a franchise player right now in Toronto.
You don't have anybody like those 3 guys I just named.
No.
So it doesn't matter if you get one of those guys. That's probably
take
a good
thing. And like I was saying, I'd probably take one of the top 5, top 10 in this draft if it's as deep as the experts are saying. And I would go and I would get Bernier or Backstrom or Jimmy Howard. Some of these goalies out there that because I don't think.
I would certainly go for Bernier. The other 2 I'd be more hesitant about. I like Bernier a lot, and he's young enough, and he needs a chance. And in the end, I think this team needs sort of some hope. I think that this team needs hope and some players that are up and coming instead of the fan favorites. I think in this city we have a real issue with that guy's talented, but he doesn't cross the boards, or he doesn't go into those players are absolutely needed on every single team, but those are also players that you need on your third line, not on your first line.
Yeah.
You don't see Crosby going and nailing some guy into the boards. What you do see him doing is getting 3 points a night.
Well, exactly. I mean, if you can find a Crosby, obviously you take him. If you find a Malkin or an Ovechkin, now Ovechkin does a lot of banging, but at the same time, he's had some injuries, that sort of thing. So it's tougher for a guy like Ovechkin to come around than say a Crosby, as far as an aggressive superstar like that. But having said that, there are guys like Milan Lucic in Boston. He is considered a first-line power forward. Now you can't have your team. You don't win with a team full of power forwards either. They're too injured. Wendell Clark, power forward.
Well, I mean, Lucic is a great player. It's a relative good comment, but Lucic plays 14, 15 minutes a game, and he's only getting about 40 points. So he's necessarily a good player, but he's not on that team. Patrice Bergeron, Tyler Seguin, Chara on the back end.
Absolutely. I mean and you need those 4 or 5.
Well, that's where you need the skill. That's all I'm saying. You need the skill.
Absolutely, you need skill, and you need a Sundin. Sundin was not a banger. You need a McGillney. You need those kind of players. Doug Gilmour was a gritty player, but he had his best career, and at the time might have been, if you believe in Don Cherry, was the best player in the world for a year or 2 playing with the Leafs. Now, he played a gritty, tough-nosed style, but he was not the same style player that Wendell Clark was, which was the player you're talking about. That period of time, he was a little more towards the setup man. He was the playmaker for Andrechuk all that time. So, yeah, you need some talent. You definitely need some talent. And, part of the problem is a guy like Phil Kessel has tons of talent. The guy scores a lot of goals, but he's not willing to even get close to being dirty to get it. Gilmour and a lot of those guys, even a Crosby will take punishment in the corners to push that
button. And I understand that. I guess what I get frustrated with, especially with this town, is, and this is for me playing the game too and understanding it, is that you do need the guys that are fan favorites in this market. There's no doubt about it. The Ty Domies, all those guys that are become fan favorites in this market. You need those guys on your team. I get that. The problem that this team has had for years upon years, that they don't have a top 2 lines to score you those goals, and they certainly do not have the back end to score you those goals. And then in turn with that, the back end then turns into, do you have the goalie? No. When the Leafs were even competitive at that time, that's when they had the Belfour, the Joseph. Those were named goalies back then.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't suggest to you right now that Scrimmins or Reimer are top-end goalies. They're bottom-tier goalies.
No, and Reimer showed up on the scene, had a good back end of the season, and then he's had concussion problems. And he's had concussion problems his entire career, from what we've been told. Scrivens, at least to me, traditionally has come up the right way. He's come up through the ranks of the AHL. He backstopped the Marlies to, again, we can go back to the Marlies discussion. He can backstop the Marlies all he wants. It doesn't mean he's going to transfer into a good NHL goalie. He's looked great this season as well. But he was not on the radar. He was not a superstar goalie coming out. I mean, we can go back to the Leaf goalies and talk about Rask, Raycroft, and Justin Pogge.
Where's Rask playing?
Oh, he's in Boston. He's another Boston transplant. So, I mean, year...
They've made Boston an unbelievably great team.
Yeah.
Dougie
exactly.
Hamilton, Kessel, and Rask. But right there you have some good players.
Absolutely. And
that's from two separate trades.
And, the Pogge thing, too. I mean, Pogge, speaking of the ECHL, that was the last time I heard where Pogge was the ECHL. And he was the next superstar
He was
goalie.
the reason they traded Rask.
Absolutely. They didn't need Rask. So they traded Rask for Andrew Raycroft.
The one thing I heard today is teams don't compete if they trade away first-round draft picks. And I really believe that. I think that's a really interesting comment.
Not in this era.
Not in this era. And the Leafs traded two of them in one trade.
Absolutely.
And the trade has backfired. That's where I think this team has really backfired. I think if Burke keeps those players and get rid of Kessel, Kessel's not there, but you get a Dougie Hamilton, you get a Tyler Seguin, this roster you could actually be excited about, because then you have...
Well, part of the problem here, and this is what the roundabout has been going on for the last 24 hours, is when Burke made that deal, he firmly believed the Leafs would not finish that low. He thought the roster would finish, somewhere in the top 10 of the league, and that first-round draft pick wouldn't mean a thing. So the roundabout becomes the trade. Had they done that, would have been if they had made the playoffs and finished 5th overall, then Seguin's never in the picture in that draft pick. So
unfortunately, though, it's what happened.
Well, and what happened was a lot of people said he over-evaluated the talent of the team and the guys he brought in. He brought in Komisarek and Boschman, paid them a ton of money. None of those have worked. Colby Armstrong, and this is brought up, I heard on the radio today, his free agent acquisitions since he's been here have been brutal, and that's been guys like Komisarek, Colton Orr, Colby Armstrong, Francois Boschman. I mean, those guys cost him a ton of money in roster spots, whereas his draft picks have been okay.
But none of them have played in the NHL yet.
Not a one. I mean, especially when you pump the wheels of Nazem Kadri the way you have all these years, and the kid he can't make the team. He can't make one of the worst teams in the league. How good is he?
Scary. All right, guys, we're going to wrap this up, but if I'm Brian Colangelo right now, I'd be hiding in my office.
Well, the TFC made a change. They made and they got a new president, and then they got a new coach in the last couple months.
That's what I said, if I'm Brian Colangelo.
Well, at least that team's coming around a little bit, right? That team, at least right now, looks like they're on par with where they should have been.
Like I said, if I'm Brian Colangelo, I'm hiding in my office. I think the team's coming around, but that doesn't mean you're saving your job. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We have 2 articles right now up on the website, onesecondleft.com. Ryan's on Twitter at rdon1secleft, and you can check us on our main Twitter page at 1secondleft on Twitter. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back at you next week with probably a little bit more NHL preview action.